Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another Breakfast with Blaha. And today I'm having fat-free Greek yogurt, frozen cherries, and almond butter. Let's talk a little bit about rows. Now, you guys know my opinion, and this has stayed more or less the same over the years, that rows are the overall best back builder, and different variations of the rows. And I don't even think that's subject to debate. Because again, some people say, what about pull-ups and chin-ups? Well, you guys know I like those. I think pull-ups and chin-ups are a fun test of strength. They're a fun exercise to do, good exercise to show off on. But again, we come back over to weighted chin or weighted pull-up is a legitimate test of strength. I'm a strength guy. I appreciate that. Even though it's not a classic barbell lift, I like tests of strength. So that's something that makes them shine for me, right? Because it's really hard to test strength on something like a row. But realistically speaking, the only part of the back they really work thoroughly is the lats. They don't work most of the back. And people say, well, the lats are the biggest. No, the lats do not represent most of the back. They don't. Your traps are just as big as your lats in terms of muscle potential. We count the deltoid. The deltoid is bigger than any other muscle in the upper body, but only a small part of it counts as the back. And you have all the rhomboids, we have the erectors, which overall are massive. Traps don't get worked that well by pull-ups and chin-ups. Lower traps and things do a bit. The rest of the trap, not so much. Rhomboids, not so much. Posterior delts, not that much. I mean, some. Maybe it's half sets for them. And they don't work the erectors at all. What pull-ups and chin-ups work amazingly well is biceps. That's where they really shine, and rows cannot compete with them on biceps. It's one reason a lot of bros like chin-ups and pull-ups. Lats and arms, right? But if we want full back development, rows are king. But then we come to the question of, what are we doing with the row? There's so many variations, and you guys know that I'm a fan of rotating variations because we need it for overall development. We need it to avoid overuse injuries. We can do it to specialize a little more in what we're trying to do, especially with something like a row. So we come to all this stuff of rows where we're standing, rows where we're chest supported, wide grip, narrower grips, underhand grip. Then we even have stuff like inverted rows where we're hanging from a bar and doing rows with our body. So what do they work different? Some of it's really easy to look at. Standing rows work the erectors more, right? They work the erectors more. They teach us to maintain a certain amount of posterior chain tightness isometrically, which can help us better at deadlifts. It can help us with those things. And there's a lot of debate as to whether a pen lay row, which is off the floor, which is a standard barbell row, versus a bent over row as to which one's actually better for deadlift and why. And I guess it really depends on what your positions look like on the deadlift. But I see a lot of deadlift specialists actually debate that point. Some feel one is better than the other. But we have that to consider, and people say, well, what would be the difference? Well, you have to look at what's going on with your training. Are you in a phase of training where your low back is really beat up? It's fatigued. All right? It's getting so much work that it's not recovering, in which case a chest-supported row makes perfect sense. Right? It makes a lot of sense at that point. If it's your low back can handle it, standing ones have their place. Definitely have their place. Again, particularly for deadlift carryover. As far as the pen lay versus a bent over one, again, could debate on that a lot. I don't know if I have the answer for that, but what I do have answers for is all the other questions. So, generally speaking, the wider we go, the more upper back we work. Okay, so we're dealing with upper back versus middle back. So again, what's the difference? Middle back would be more of lower trap, lats, right? Lower trap and lats. Upper back would be more of our mid trap, our upper trap, posterior deltoids, rhomboids, teres minor, infraspinatus, which is again one of the biggest of the rotator cuffs. This is what we mean by upper back versus lower back. So the closer in we go, the emphasis shifts down the back a little bit, right, more towards the middle, and the wider we go, it shifts up. It shifts up. But it doesn't mean the rest of it doesn't get worked. In other words, that emphasis doesn't remove it, just like people understand this. And on a bench press, if you look at the data that's out there, an incline bench works the upper chest more, but it still works the lower chest. It's just an emphasis. A decline bench, or even a flat bench with an arch, works more the middle and lower chest, but it still works the upper chest enough to stimulate growth. Okay, that's a big difference. And it's the same thing with all the types of rows compared to all the types of presses. That's our big difference there. As far as hand position goes, if we go to some sort of pronated row, probably moves the emphasis down just a little bit. Right, instead of overhand grip. So let's say, what do we mean, like with dumbbells, if you're doing it with a football bar, right? So we're going to see a little bit different. So we're going to see different. And I like to use all those things for rows at different times. Use my different bars, barbells, dumbbells. What about when we go underhand grip? People say, well, it's more for biceps. Yes, but it also brings the emphasis back closer to the lats. So if we're doing an underhand grip row, we're a lot more similar to a chin-up or a pull-up. They're replaceable for those reasons. Right? They are replaceable for those reasons. In other words, if you don't want to do chin-ups or pull-ups, you could do that. Although I think we could make the argument, I don't think the data is there to really show that we would get as much bicep. Even with an underhand grip, I'm not convinced, again, just due to the angles involved, that the bicep activation is going to be as high as a chin-up or always a pull-up. Right? A pull-up, even an overhand grip pull-up, is actually a big bicep exercise if you look at the data. It has to do with vertical versus horizontal pulling that causes that. Right? Vertical pulling works way more bicep no matter what you do. It just has to do with the angles that the muscles in the joints are put at. But an underhand grip shifts the emphasis back down a little bit. But the thing is, there's going to be different variations of these that work the other smaller muscles more or less. And that, I think, is a lot harder to pin down. It's really hard to pin down. So again, it's just helpful as we're doing this to rotate through different variations to make sure that we get more complete back development, right? Because we're hitting a few different angles, it's going to be more helpful. And again, it can help with overuse. So a lot of this comes down to balancing our overuse issues, which again is going to be tendons and things, and it will cause injuries over time. Balancing it also with more complete hypertrophy, along with specializing of how much low back and stuff you need. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.